I so worry, Tyler, about the kids and the people and domestic violence because we do know that when kids go to school, it's the teachers that typically can be on the front lines to recognize the abuse. But also when people go to work and they have to go into the office, it could be their coworkers that are also recognizing the signs of domestic violence. And now that that is being shuttered, or at least even just in somewhat of a virtual world, it's still not the same. And we do know the cases of domestic violence is on the rise right now because of the pandemic. And to talk a little bit more about this very serious conversation, let's bring in Melissa Sinclair. She's the Social Action Program Director over at Haven here in Oakland County. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Even more importantly, thank you to you and your team for the work that you're doing.
It's a privilege to do this work with survivors, I would say. Absolutely.
What has the last year been like for you and members of your team?
I would say that the last year has really spoken to the importance of our work. I can share with you that year to date, my team is up 340 cases from this time last year. And so it's been a difficult year. It's been a difficult year, I think, for everyone individually. And of course, for survivors who have been experiencing another pandemic, which is intimate partner violence that has really found a home and flourished during the pandemic, and especially the stay-at-home order.
And Melissa, those are just the numbers that are being reported to you. We think about so many people that aren't free, who aren't seeking help right now.
Right. Yep. It is so much more prevalent, I think, than is even reflected in any national numbers and any numbers that we have here at Haven. What we know is 1 in 4 women has experienced intimate partner violence in her lifetime. And so that is a staggering number. And so, of course, there are so many survivors in our community and across the United States and the world that are not experiencing the help maybe that they need and that they deserve.
And Melissa Sinclair with us here on the MegaCast. She's the Social Action Program Director for Haven. And I guess I should back up just for a second. Talk to us more about Haven and your mission.
Sure. So Haven is Oakland County's only agency that services survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. And our mission is not only to provide services, comprehensive, free, confidential services to survivors in Oakland County, but also to educate our community on intimate partner violence so that everybody knows the warning signs and what to look out for so that we can all help survivors together as a community.
What are some of the warning signs?
Sure. So like you just said, people aren't going to work anymore. Children aren't going to classes. And so some of the warning signs are not hearing from your friends or your family as much as maybe you would have before. You're experiencing maybe less communication. You're seeing them far less often. You're maybe seeing a change in their behavior or their demeanor. There are so many different warning signs to domestic violence, and it really comes down to knowing your loved ones, knowing your friends, and knowing your colleagues, and seeing perhaps those changes in behaviors or routines or patterns that would point to something that's going on maybe at the home.
And I want to point out first, it just goes to our minds where we think this is a woman's issue. It's not. This can be on all sides of the spectrum.
That's so true. Men, women, non-binary folks, the trans community, everybody can experience intimate partner violence. It knows no class, it knows no race, it knows no religion. It really spans across the lifespan as well. So it can happen to rich folks, it can happen to low-income individuals. It really, men, of course, it can happen to anyone.
So what are the trends that you're seeing there at Haven throughout the pandemic? Has it been changing right now?
I would say that it has. I mean, domestic violence has always been a problem throughout our communities. But what we've seen is an increase in lethality, an increase, unfortunately, in homicides in Oakland County. We've had several throughout the pandemic. And so we're seeing that things are becoming more lethal, a lot more scary for survivors. Certainly, we are seeing that.
Which kind of goes into our earlier conversation about kind of gun violence, because we know guns are in the home.
Right. Yeah, that can increase the risk of homicide by 500%.
Wow.
So if there is a weapon in the home, there is a higher likelihood of homicide in that situation.
So we know what the problem is. What do you think the solution is? How can we mitigate these numbers and save people?
I think part of the solution really lies in the folks that are committing intimate partner violence. They are the real solution here because they are choosing violence. They are choosing to behave this way. And so for me, especially in my role, I deal a lot with court, law enforcement. And so for me, offender accountability is paramount in addressing intimate partner violence. And of course, help for the survivors, healing for the survivors, and justice for them. But really looking at the people that are committing these acts and changing the conversation about domestic violence to really focus on those that are using the abusive tactics.
So we are with Melissa Sinclair. She is the Social Action Program Director for Haven here in Oakland County. This is such a broad problem. And when we're talking about this, what are some of the signs that maybe family and friends should be looking out for? Because we know sometimes when you're in the bubble, I don't want to call it a bubble, but, for just terms, maybe it's the people outside of you that sees the signs before you do as an individual.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So with domestic violence, usually abusers are very stealthy in what they're doing. And so they're not showing those outward behaviors that maybe we would be looking for or expecting. But some of the subtle signs, like I had mentioned earlier, a change in behavior of your loved one. If you know that your sister calls you almost every day, and that's something that's been going on for years, she gets in a relationship and those calls become less frequent and you're struggling to get a hold of her, that might be something to check in with and to ask her about. I think some of the telltale signs that a lot of people expect are if it's summertime and somebody is wearing long sleeves like I am today, something that would be inappropriate for the dress, it could be covering up bruises. So it's really about knowing your friends and knowing your loved ones enough to know when, okay, maybe they got in this relationship and now I'm noticing some changes, and it can be subtle and progressive over time. And generally it is that way because abusers don't want people to know what's going on in their home.
But what about when you're isolated from your friends and your family members? Because for some people, going to work each and every day was their salvation. It was their sanctuary, their safe place.
Absolutely. And that is what has made intimate partner violence, I suspect, increase over time is because of the isolation with the pandemic. That is really a perfect storm for an abuser because one of the tactics is to isolate people from their friends, family, and support anyways. And so if you are experiencing intimate partner violence and it is safe for you, I would really encourage you to reach out to Haven, reach out to our 24-hour confidential crisis line, and we would be happy to talk to you about your experience and to help you figure out some resources and some possible solutions for you.
Melissa Sinclair here with us here on the MegaCast. She is the Social Action Program Director for Haven. You guys have been such a vital part of our community for so many years. Anything maybe I didn't touch on that you want to share with our listeners and our viewers before we say goodbye?
I would just say that Haven offers comprehensive services. We have our 24-hour crisis line. You can reach us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year at 248-334-1274. In addition to that, we offer free confidential counseling that's conducted by licensed therapists in the state of Michigan. We have my team, the social action team. We can help you file for PPOs. We can go to court with you in Oakland County. We can get you a sexual assault exam, or if you've been strangled by an intimate partner, we can see you at our clinic. We have so many resources here at Haven. Of course, our shelter, I feel everyone knows about that, but if you don't, for the past 46 years, Haven has been here to offer comprehensive services for survivors. So please call us. If you know a loved one is maybe experiencing domestic violence and you need support or some help to figure out what the options are, please give us a call. We're standing by. We're here to listen. We believe you. And we're ready to support you in any way that we can.
And Melissa, we should point out that this is not just a female problem.
Correct. Yeah, it can happen to anybody at any time, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, any identity. It really knows no bounds, and you're most deserving of help. If this is something that you're experiencing, it's not your fault. You didn't deserve it. And there are people in your community that are ready to help you.
Well, we so appreciate you and your members of your team for helping our community. Again, Melissa Sinclair with us here on the MegaCast. She's the Social Action Program Director for Haven. Their crisis line, 1-877-922-1274.